Evening.
Good evening.
Right, okay, so Waters of Mars. What's the fan consensus on Waters of Mars these days? Because I don't feel it gets talked about, at least in my little circle of fans, which is just, it's understandable to an extent because it's bleak, but in a bleak way that goes even beyond how Midnight is bleak. Because what makes Midnight bleak is the shocking realisation that the bad guys are us. But what makes Waters of Mars bleak is everything that happens in Waters of Mars, with the exception of the humans that are actually being noble and good and kind and generous to each other and flawed and just as people should be. In fact, I can't think of a more real and heartwarming group of people that RTD has penned and put together, and Phil Ford. But I'm sure that RTD has an awful lot to do with shaping those people. And of course, no, you know what I'm about to say, the real thing that makes Waters of Mars as horrible as it is the fact that for the first time in, what was it, 45 years? Something like that. Turns out the Doctor's the bad guy. And it hurts. And it's weird. And it's deeply uncomfortable. And
It does go proper knobhead, doesn't it?
he is... And it's the final stop on the journey of this Doctor, isn't it? Because throughout the time of us watching these in sequence with the kids and having that sort of new perspective, that time again watching it, you do get to see how Tennant goes from being a Doctor who, let's be honest, in his first story, managed to depose a Prime Minister that should have been in place for 3 terms and throw a Satsuma to make sure a Sycorax plummets to his death. No messing. So this Doctor always had that edge of steel about him, but increasingly he's got more and more self-obsessed. Feels a big word, actually. I mean, he's got a lot to be...
Self-aggrandised.
Oh, my goodness. It's just constant, isn't it, you know? And then his relationship with his friends seems to compound this hubris, which word that Humphrey said the other day. Compounds this hubris. So we get his relationship with Rose. And then even by the time Rose comes back again, it's like, yeah, I'm too important now for this race. That's genuinely, with hindsight, what that felt like. You know what I mean? Here's this, you know, Xerox of me. That's who can be with you, Rose, which hurts.
Facsimile.
And then you get Martha, who... Martha, a companion who, on paper at least, seems like the perfect companion. No messing. This is the person who you can accompany you and make the universe a better place. But he's too pig-headed and up himself to really allow that relationship to be until it's too late, until he's had his chance. Then you get Donna, thank goodness. And Donna, like so many times before, and I don't mean in the programme, but in all the spin-off media, when you pair a Doctor up with a slightly older woman than usual, Donna's not an old lady, obviously, but it doesn't take very much, but you just balance out that power imbalance that's usually there with a Doctor and a female companion. And it does the Doctor no end of good, generally. I genuinely feel it's a place the programme should go to, you know, more regularly. But that's by the by. And then, you know, the tragedy of losing Donna, and I do think it's a tragedy, and I do think it's something that intrinsically whacks this Doctor so hard that we end up with Time Lord Victorious at the end of Waters of Mars. And it's horrible. And it's the first time ever where I've not liked the Doctor. And I'm not talking about, like, oh, Colin Baker's tried to strangle Perry. And obviously I don't like that. But I can rationalise that to a certain extent. Stop it. So and it's not like, oh, Pertwee, shut up. You know what I mean? Because those are instances where I can whinge at my Doctor and still love the Doctor. No, this was the first time, and I still remember it vividly. The first time when you looked at the Doctor and went, no, This isn't okay. This really isn't okay. And the problem is that the show does a fantastic job at the end of Waters of Mars of retaining the trappings of the glorious, the Doctor wins moments. But that period where he's sort of like summoning the TARDIS and he's got the robot and Adelaide keeps looking at him and he looks back at her and Winnie got suckered into it, but Humphrey didn't. It was really odd, the tension in the room when we watched it, because it's just like, no, this isn't. And then, of course, they land in the Christmas, very Christmassy. It wasn't shown at Christmas, I don't think, but there we go. And they land, and it's horrible. It's genuinely horrible. And we have a suicide, and the show has toyed with that, but this is as overt as the show gets about it. And then we get the breakdown, you know, the ego death. Is that the right use of that phrase? Anyway, whatever it is. We get the moment where this Doctor knows the game is up, the gig's up, it's gone too far. It's time to tidy up the trash. Of course he doesn't, he goes off and marries Queen Elizabeth, but we shall talk about that a lot later. Anyway, so in terms of the story, our story of this Doctor, the most arrogant of all the Doctors, and I include Baker in that, Colin Baker, I mean, Tennant, deceptively, is the most cocksure and the most...
Power hungry.
Yeah. And power hungry, Lib said there if you didn't hear.
No, not power hungry. Just like destroyed by power.
Yeah. Absolute power corrupts and... No, what's the phrase? Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts, absolutely.
Yeah, he's the Lady Macbeth, isn't he?
Yeah. And it's just painful to watch as a fan. But it's brilliant because, as I've said many a time before, Doctor Who's a programme that can do all stories in all ways, and this is where we get to see a version of the Doctor that we have never seen before, and it's not particularly comfortable. But if the programme can't keep breaking new ground at 45, 55, 65 years, then it ceases to be a viable programme. So let's be thankful that writers as brilliant as RTD and Phil Ford are finding new ways to do this to our beloved Doctor. We need to talk about the story, though. What a fantastic piece of story. I mean, it's Doctor Who by the numbers makes it sound less than it is, but what you get here is a base under siege type affair, ramped up to the max, employing all of the tricks of pursuity type, zombie type films, with some absolutely devastating imagery. That moment where they see the gardener, who's lovely, who gets like 2 lines and is delighted at a carrot. Any character who's delighted at a carrot deserves our sympathy straight off the bat. What a sad loss to the Doctor Who universe that man was. Anyway, when he's got the other guy and he's got his hand over his head and the water's coming out, and it's the weirdest thing. And the other thing in this story that absolutely got me and makes me shudder just to think about it is the way that the actors move when they've been infected by the water, particularly the woman at the end, and you can see her through the glass door, and there's something on the glass door, and there's the water behind, and behind that you just see her shaking, and you know what's coming, and it's horrible, absolutely horrible. I also want to say, in amongst some brilliant performances here, like really strong performances, did we say it's Lindsley or Leslie Duncan? Lindsay Duncan is exactly the sort of weight and quality of actress that I think was missing in the last story. In a very different way. Obviously, it's a very different part. But my gosh, I seriously buy in this being an integral person to the flow of human history. And I absolutely buy into their relationship. I like the fact that it's so sort of nearly what we anticipate from this one-off companion thing, which, as discussed last time, we've had a number of now, but it never quite gets there because the circumstances don't allow it to be. There's the little quip about the bikes and this, that and the other. But that scene when she's talking to him in the airlock is just painful, absolutely painful. But I just think that what you've got there is an absolutely top quality actress giving Tennant something to play hard against. Within the context of a story where, you know, that needs to be happening. But there we go. What a phenomenal Doctor Who story. And I think if you're a certain Doctor Who type of fan, you could legitimately say, oh, it's one of the greatest stories of all time. What do you mean? What particular ending?
Well, the fact that the sort of prophecy had to happen. Not prophecy, but it does mean like the fact. Spoiler alert! But the fact that she killed herself.
Well, I said I think Doctor Who's toyed with that sort of thing before, but it's the most overt that it's ever gone down that route, and it's the right story in which to do that kind of thing. But it's painful to be part of. And, you know, it's so. I tell you, one of the things that really brings home for me, and it's why the Doctor's sort of hubristic journey into goddom ultimately is shown to be a folly, is the fact that no matter how much he's going to play fast and loose with the laws and time, no matter how risky he's going to make it, can't control the essential goodness, the anti-midnightness, if you like, of people, which is what Adelaide does at the end. She knows that her death is integral, but that has been made clear. And the fact that she rebels against his decree, specifically using words like that, decree that that history will change, is an exceptionally powerful moment and reinforces the quality of this story, which is that, they are pioneers. That's an RTD word, isn't it? Pioneers. We're not going to be messed about as human beings. We might not live for thousands of years. We not be able to regenerate. But as the Doctor usually would say, we're all brilliant. And, we've got our own free will and we will exercise that as we see fit. And her decision to do that and to tally with the laws of time, that's actually a really profound thing when you think about it like that. Anyway, one more story to go. It feels very odd having arrived. This seems to have come around a lot quicker than I anticipated, quite frankly. It seemed when DT, back in the day, was the Doctor, there was halcyon, the golden age of Doctor Who, the third golden age, in my opinion. It seemed to go on forever, but it's not going to go on forever because it's going to finish possibly on Friday if we can handle it. Libby's ignoring.
No, not on Friday.
Can't deal with it. No, can't deal with it. It's too big, isn't it?
I want some cherry on
There will be tears. There will be many, 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 many tears.
Yeah, not on Friday.